Welcome to the 1% Doctor Podcast. What separates the good from the great, the standard from the extraordinary? It's mindset, it's execution, and it's the relentless pursuit of growth. I'm Adam Lamb. I'm your host. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the 1% Doctor Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Lamb. Today I have a good friend of mine, an amazing physician, a guy who's just built a tremendous life in business and serves tons of people. And I've known him for a long time, so I've had the chance to see his evolution. And I think you'll find it inspiring, interesting, and honestly, very educational. Welcome to the show, Dr. Doug Lucas. Thanks for being a guest. Thanks for being a friend. And excited to have you here and share your background with the listener.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Happy to be here.
So let's dive into like the early journey of your medicine. Well, first, how long have you been practicing?
Well, gosh, I'm somewhere around 15 years. So I've been out for a while.
15 years in the game. And so a lot of physicians that might be listening might be right where you're at or coming up on that and realizing like, and you'll share the story, but you had a pivot in your career, which has been powerful. But let's talk about what got you into medicine and let's share a little bit about the journey.
Yeah, so I had kind of an atypical pathway into medical school. My father was a cardiothoracic surgeon, and so I actually sort of ran from medicine. I watched his lifestyle. He had a solo private practice, took call at 6 hospitals. I mean, the dude was busy. And so I didn't want that kind of lifestyle for myself or for my family. And so I kind of ran from it. And then I ended up circling back to it just as I kind of went through my early professional career. I thought about going to physical therapy school. I was in the fine arts and danced professionally for a while in ballet, and just realized that, gosh, medicine is a good career because it can provide financial security, job security. There's other aspects of it that I find really appealing. And honestly, I didn't know anything else because I didn't have any other role models. So I ended up kind of circling back to it and getting into medical school. And when I was in medical school, I just fell in love with the surgical side. So I knew that I wanted to go down the surgical pathway. Orthopedics was probably the hardest thing to get into. And, I'm sort of a fast dog with a carrot in front of it when you show me a goal like that. So I really ran after orthopedics and loved the black and white nature of, this is broken, I can fix it. Really, really appealing. And so that's what pushed me down that pathway to the orthopedic surgery realm.
What's funny is I've known you for a long time and I didn't know that you used to do some sort of dance. And it sounds funny, but hey, and you probably didn't know, I used to do tap dance and swing dance. And I got into it because a buddy of mine who was an awesome tap dancer, he's actually pretty renowned. His name's Rick Williams. And he's like, hey guys, come do this tap dance thing. And I'm like, nah. And he's like, there's going to be girls. Or we're like, hey. And so we got into it, but it was a fun thing that I got into. Like I still have my tap shoes. I'll still throw them out for the kids, but we do like a tap swing dance and I thought it was like one of the coolest things ever. So look at that. I learned something new about you. And I thought I already knew it all. So but it's funny that we have these unique stories of our past.
Yeah. I don't let that one come out very often. I mean, it's public knowledge, but yeah, it was sort of pre-mobile phone days. So there's not a ton of pictures and footage, and most all the videos from the performance times are actually all like copyrighted and can't be found. So yeah, there's not a lot of evidence, but no, it was an interesting lead into medical school because it provided a lot of different perspective that really made it easy to feel comfortable in front of patients.
And you may not have connected these dots, or maybe you did, but there's a part of like the art. I love art. I'm not good at it. I'm not a very good dancer. I love art. I have art throughout my home that I love. That's usually from, like up and coming artists. And there's a part of art that harnesses creativity. And when you harness and like you're connected to that creative side of yourself, I think it can open doors, which it has professionally for you. And it allows you just to be multidimensional versus, here's the course, stay the course. The artist, and you can think, is there another way? Could I do something else? Like what, and we can find a little bit more self-fulfilling ways to proceed in our career, I think. And it can come from something little like having experience in something like that. So I think it's actually really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So, you got into orthopedic surgery, and how long did you do that before the pivot?
Yeah. So I count residency and fellowship in here when I do the math. But so residency, fellowship, 6 years total. And then I practiced in Durango, Colorado for 3 years, mostly foot and ankle, a little bit of general. Then I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, where I practiced for another 3 years, more general, less foot and ankle, as I was sort of getting frustrated in the space, and then ultimately pivoting out. So total of like 11-ish years if you include training.
Wow. And then when did you decide you wanted to get out of orthopedic surgery?
So the first time I had this thought, actually, it was at a Tony Robbins event, the first
Wow.
Tony Robbins event I ever went to. And we went, mostly my wife was interested, and she's an entrepreneur, as you know. And we were there and just kind of doing that visioning work of like, what are the most important things? What's the 80/20? What's the path forward? What's the most impact? And every time I ran down these pathways and thought about these different realities, I realized I got to quit my job. Like every time I found it to be a limiting factor in our progress. And so but that was the first time. And that was early. I mean, we were still in Durango. So this was probably like a year or two into practice.
Okay. Yeah, and your wife she's an incredible woman. I know her. She's a friend of mine too. And she's built a cool business helping people with weight loss. And so, how's that been to have like kind of two professionals out kind of chasing their dream? And was part of that maybe like she was doing hers and you were like doing something that you maybe thought was your dream, and then maybe it opened up the opportunity to what may actually been more of your dream? Like, did that happen?
Yeah. So this is really interesting personal growth for me. I now in hindsight realize when I was looking at different fields within medicine, I mean, honestly, even going into medicine and journal, I was doing it to provide for my family. I was doing it because I knew that it was secure. I knew that I'd be able to provide for my family, have the lifestyle that I wanted to have. I had this mentor and role model as my father. So I went into it really from that perspective, not actually because I wanted to do it. And then
Mm,
same thing with orthopedics. I went into it for a lot of reasons. I think because it pays better. Sure. Foot and ankle was my subspecialty. Better lifestyle there. Yes. But ultimately, I mean, there was some ego in there, but ultimately I said, this is again, what I want for my family. This is the kind of lifestyle that I want to have. And then when she started her business and she started becoming successful as an entrepreneur, that's not something that we had actually planned. Right. Like she
right.
was going to start a business and, if we made some extra income, great. But like my vision was I'm the head of the household, primary income earner. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. And if she wants to have a side hustle, cool. Like that's great.
Yeah.
But her side hustle became a monster. She turns out she is a badass entrepreneur and she can run a team and she can build a program. And so there was a period of time of, we'll call it several years, where we struggled as a couple to kind of figure out what does that look like for us? Because it wasn't my vision and it honestly wasn't her vision either. And we were certainly not aligned on what that growth looked like as a family. And so there was a lot of friction for a while. But what I ended up kind of figuring out for myself is that, okay, I've got this woman that I love. She's my partner. She's my person. Like I know this. I want to support her and her passion. I
Hmm.
really need to figure out what my passion is. I was very fortunate to be in a situation where, she asked me the question, well, what do you want to do? Like, like we have this opportunity where like, not necessarily going to walk away from my work, but like, if I could change it, how would I change it? And it's a really unique situation to be in that I had never considered, not once in my life. What do I want to do? And so the answer to that was, well, I need to pivot out of what I'm doing, mostly because the lifestyle piece doesn't fit. My wife's busy. At that time, she had 6 different brick and mortar locations and a nationwide presence and a team of over 70 people. She's busy. We have 3 kids at that point, all under the ages of 8.
Right.
We have 3 kids and 2 dogs, and I can't be gone at the hospital rounding and on call, on trauma call, at the level 2 trauma center locally here in Asheville. So that piece just didn't work for us. And we had to figure out a path out of that. And that was a big part of why I made the shift I made.
And I think you and I have that in common too, is where both of our wives are producers, and there's a part of it too of, like you said, like being the man, right? Like before became an entrepreneur, I was, in the mortgage industry as a portfolio manager at Quicken Loans, did pretty well. My wife did too. And we were both kind of, both pursuing but that's her dream. She loves that Fortune 50 company, move up the ladder. Like that was her vision and always has been. And she loves that. And it wasn't really for me. I was doing something that was like, hey, look, I'm making money. It's not bad, doing better than I thought I was going to do, but it wasn't the thing I loved, which allowed me to pivot, but I had the safety and security. And I'm grateful that I had a wife that had a good career that allowed me to take some risks to become an entrepreneur, figure out how to start a business, which was awesome. And I wouldn't do anything different. But, there's a part of that too, is the guy where, my wife might've been making more money than me for a few years while I'm figuring it out. When you're starting something, especially me, at least you went to school and you were a doctor. I had no college, no business. And, it's like, the likelihood of me having success with it was super low. And so I just, you're dealing with it in your mind of like, I'm sure all these people are like, the stay at home slouch dad or, like, whatever story you want to make, but until it like becomes something. Right. And there's a part of that for me that I struggled with. And I think out of ego, like you mentioned, there's some ego and there's some insecurity and some of that stuff that you wrestle with. And that's why I think who you marry is like the most important thing. Like
Man.
the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, as much as, you and I, again, close friends, known each other a long time. Like when it comes down to this, like we can talk business and health like all day long, but at the end of the day, the foundational stuff of like who you marry and your ability to communicate with your spouse and your ability to have the intimacy, which a lot of people think is sex. No, I'm talking about intimacy of like vulnerability, open communication, to help paint that picture. And because sometimes we may not realize it, but we need our spouse, either side, to give us permission to pursue our dream. And that's a true partner, someone who's like, go chase your thing. Like if it's good and it's helping, it's productive, like I support you 100%, whatever it is. And just having that, whether it's the financial support, but the big part is like knowing that they support you as a person is monumental, and it allows you to go pursue your dream, which you've had a chance to go do and build, which is super impressive. So talk a little bit about what got you into where you're at today. And I think there's a lot of areas to discuss. Like you have the business side, and then you also have like, you've done a great job at building your personal brand. And so talk a little bit about, because and the struggles with that, because, the Doug I knew 5-6 years ago would not be excited about creating content. The Doug I know today crushes it. And so a lot of doctors, the guys I coach or work with, are like, well, I'm not into the camera, or I don't want, I'm like, you want to win? If you want to win, you got to get in. Otherwise you're going to lose. And so talk a little bit about, a little bit about what you do today, but then a little bit maybe of the challenges and struggles you had to overcome to get there.
Yeah, so I'll just give you the rundown of where I am now. So as of today, we have essentially 4 companies that I've started and built up over the last few years. We have the practice Optimal Human Health MD, and this is a practice, this is the primary thing. And this was the telehealth practice that I started right at the beginning of the pandemic, with my thought of actually working with my wife's clients, people who had lost weight, needed hormone, thyroid support, maybe some functional testing, et cetera. So I wanted to create that thing, and it ended up becoming something else. And I'll circle back to that. We have a specific for women, mostly postmenopausal women, hormone company called Pema Bioidentical. And that practice was built out of necessity because we have now an audience from social, which I'll talk about, but an audience of women who were talking about the research of what we think is the best way to do HRT, and they don't have a way to get it. And so we just, again, are filling this need with a
HRT, like hormone replacement therapy for women.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And then the third piece is now we have a community specific for bone health, because we realized, okay, we don't have room for all the people that need help, and not everybody needs the help that we offer. So we have a paid community that has different courses and resources in it. And that's called the Osteo Collective, separate entity. And I have a small team that runs that. And then the fourth piece is the social media YouTube piece. And this, we recently separated out as a separate entity for affiliate revenue. And that is called Dr. D Media, which this is the YouTube channel, the Dr. Doug Show, and then our social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, et cetera.
And you've crushed it. Like, I mean, watching your social media grow and your social influence and all those kind of things massively grown. Can you reflect back at a time when you're like, hell no, I'm not doing it. Like, because the idea, like it's easy. And I know there's people, there's people that do that to guys like us that are creating content that are like, oh, here's putting this another video up. And then like 2 years later, they're like, how'd you do that? How'd you build? Wow, man, that was really cool. And I'm like, weren't you running your mouth? I don't care, but it's just but what it reminds a lot of people of how uncomfortable they are, because you and I both had to sit. Yeah, I remember it was literally 2 years ago, April 2023. I was like, I'm going to create consistent video content. And this year, that's my number one goal was I need to 100x my outreach with content, hired a full-time media guy, start a podcast, like do whatever it takes. And it all feels weird. It's hard in the beginning until you get used to it. Then you actually create systems and processes and look forward to it. So talk a little bit about that transition.
Yeah.
But there's so many physicians that need to do it. They kind
It's
of,
so hard. It's so hard. As physicians, we're busy, right? I mean, just like especially physicians who are also solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, we're busy. We don't have time. There's not enough time to see all the patients and do all the paperwork and file. If you take insurance, God help you, like and file all the paperwork. So like, how do you find time to do it? And for me, what happened is my wife was in a similar situation. We kept talking to all of our, our peers that were doing, not our physician peers, but our other entrepreneur friends who were doing it. Adam, I remember first time I heard of you, you were on a podcast, you're talking your brand, talking your products. And I think it was Ben Greenfield actually.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so I just like, I see these stories and I see it happen. I'm like, oh, like this has to be a piece of it. And then we both coach with a coach. His name's Bedros Koulian, and Bedros is all about personal brand. I mean, that's the message. If he just says one thing over and over again, it's personal brand, personal
But in
brand.
his story of what he's built from
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
gym stuff to like the massive personal brand.
Yeah. So finally I decided, same like you, I said, okay, look, I've got to do this. And so committed to being in front of the camera. And the thing that worked the best for us is YouTube. So long form content, I think just naturally I speak better in long form. I don't do 90 seconds as well, although I'm getting better. And for me, the optimal human health practice niched down into osteoporosis specifically, which fits my background, fits my interests. So now I can speak to an audience specific to this, what is relatively a small niche. And there wasn't a champion in that space. So the YouTube channel has been growing well. And I think we'll hit at the time that this goes live, probably we'll be at 100,000 subscribers, but we're at 99, like 99.4, I think.
When
Today.
did you start that?
It's been about a little over 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years,
Yeah.
100,000 followers, and you
100,000
monetize
subscribers.
it, right? You generate revenue from your YouTube, right?
Yeah. So we generate revenue from YouTube. Now it's funny when you look at how much you're like, oh, wow, that's a great revenue stream, but it just covers the editing cost. But honestly, to build a brand essentially for free, YouTube's an amazing platform for that. I love the YouTube channel, the comments, the community that's created is really inspiring. And it's given me honestly the most opportunity. I'm actually speaking at Bedros's event on that topic of how YouTube has changed the trajectory of my career.
It's
The
amazing.
rest of it,
And just in medicine too, right? Like, I mean, we think of like, you're a crazy smart guy, like you have so much experience, and it's like, it's one thing to sit in a room one-to-one and explain that to somebody about their knee or their ankle, which, yeah, great. But what if you were able to generate content around that could drive tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people to you, and you had something you could, there's the money side of like provide or sell to them, but at the same time, it was like you're impacting more
yeah.
people now than you could sitting there in the room
Oh
talking.
my gosh. Well, and this really was, this is what spurred the community, because we realized like this is an international problem and we're providing international answers, but we can't practice medicine across borders, nor do I want to create that kind of practice. So we have, the comments, I mean, obviously we have a lot of subscribers, but the comments, the community is massive. And so we thought, gosh, we need to provide better resources, and it has to be international. And that's what the Osteo Collective came out of that, because if you look at my biggest audience, it's United States, and then the UK, Canada, Australia, and Japan, and France. And it's sort of like, wow, like this is crazy. The fact that I'm having an impact, literally changing the way that people view osteoporosis on the other side of the world, all based off of this platform and this messaging. So originally I kind of like, it was a side thing, and I didn't have enough time to script. And I tried all these different ways of scripting and not scripting and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, all of them have had impact. And now I'm getting better. Like you said, like it's a trade, it's an art, and you learn how to do it over time. So I just looked on our channels. We have 276 long form videos on YouTube, and the list of things that I want to script and record on is just infinite.
Right.
So I don't see this going away anytime soon. And it's become a great funnel for the practices too. So for people that are appropriate candidates, they come in already trusting me, the process, because we are clearly the leader in the space. And so this is a really great tool.
Yeah. And I think it just gets overlooked. You see and here's the deal. There's a lot of people on YouTube or social media, they're influencers, and they're not that great, or they don't have they're not that smart. They don't have a lot of stuff to offer. And, my message to a lot of physicians I work with that I coach is like, and I'll use you as an example all the time, because I'm like, this guy did this in 2 years, right? And the revenue opportunity for building your personal brand is going to be way more bigger than the surgical side of it just takes time, but the impact side of it, of how many people you might be able to help or nudge or educate or inspire is huge. And like if that's what you're really focused on, which I am, like at the end of the day, when I'm gone and called home to heaven, I want there to be an army of people that are like, that dude helped me, like whatever, in whatever way, shape, or form, versus, the cars or whatever, those things are fine. But the impact of other people. And when you think of it, I think of these things as a duty of like, there's a voice that I have, there's a voice that you have, and there's people that need to hear it to adjust the dial a little bit for them, maybe a lot. And in some cases, they take action and become customers or clients or patients, and that's great too. But at the end of the day, I think of it as a duty of mine now that I'm in it, and maybe you feel the same way. Like I have to continue to keep doing this because lives are being changed, right? I'm sure, like you said, the comments, like the messages I get from people, like that's what fuels the fire to keep going. And the hardest part is just to get started.
Absolutely. And once we got things moving, I realized it's not, so yes, there's the client impact. Yes, there's the patient impact. There's the world impact. And honestly, what has happened, because osteoporosis is such a small space, is that now I've made all these connections with the commercial interest in the space. So now the companies are coming to me. We're talking about, from a consulting money perspective, that's there. But the bigger picture is the potential impact. I can explain to these companies, look, you need to prove that this product works for this population. You need to do this kind of research. Let me help you connect with this person who can help you create this product, which will help more people. It becomes like you can start almost like you're playing chess in the space, right? Like you start being able to move around the pieces to change the entire thing. And
Yeah.
that's what's really compelling for me.
And that's exciting. And, I've had a chance to do that in the hormone side too, of, when I could go back to when I first started and had my first 100 clients versus, in our telemedicine company versus today, I get to look back and see all the companies I've helped and where I've added influence and helped. You see, it's like, wow, that number's getting up to potentially hundreds of thousands of people that can be impacted by your ability to scale your knowledge and impact into other areas. And it just takes time. I think you would probably agree, like looking back, you don't see the full future. You just have to have some faith, right? Like you're like, all right, I'm going to start doing the thing, and the thing evolves and it's going to continue to evolve. And I'm sure you can look at it. I think people that don't think like we do could look at us and be like, I feel like you're always doing something different. I feel like you're always changing something. I feel like you're always adding something. I feel like you always got a new thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Because when you're going 100 miles an hour, the road has to change. It requires more turns and curves and stops than
Yeah.
if you're parked in a parking
Yeah.
lot, right? When you're parked in a parking lot, not a lot of stuff you got to do with the car.
Yeah.
You're going 100 miles an hour. Yeah, things change.
I
And
do.
then
I do get that criticism. You're right.
it's normal. And so when I get it, I'm like, cool. If no one's telling me that, I think I got to speed up and do more. But the folks, like you mentioned, like a guy like Bedros, some of the people that may roll with in our circle that are doing these things, they're going to cheer you on. They're going to tell you, hey, don't worry. That's just part of the game, and time to level up and do some of these things to keep doing it. And so I think there's a lot of people that, and I'm curious about this with you, especially physicians are almost wired for perfection. Like it's all about their grade, like their scores and like all these kind of things. And so they're striving for this place of perfection, realizing perfection in the real world is non-existent. But getting started and trying and just, trying to figure it out and do the best you can and learn along the way and not quit. Like how much, especially as a surgeon, right? Like when it comes to knee surgery, I'd like you to be perfect, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like, I don't want you to give me your best. And so it's understandable when you have that mindset, that frame's been created. How hard was that for you to go from a place where it's like, exactly what you're supposed to do to transition to a place of trying to figure it out? How hard was that from a mindset and maybe a feeling of defeat or hesitation? What was that like?
Yeah, boy, that was tough, right? Because you're right. I mean, as a surgeon, the surgical mindset is, I always looked at it like a performance, and every performance has got to go great. And shifting from that into practicing telehealth for one, which is totally different,
Well,
but
definitely.
then being a business owner, a manager. I mean, initially what we went from, I started with one employee, and now I think the largest we were in our company was almost 30, with 4 different providers. Managing a team, you realize, gosh, if we're going to have this impact, it can't always be me. I can't be the one doing the talk, and it's not going to sound just like me,
Mhm.
but we're smart. We can create systems and processes that are going to be able to allow somebody to be trained quickly, do the things that need to do to provide the impact that we're looking to provide. So, both as an entrepreneur on the business side, like, working, trying to figure out like who can help me. Like I reached out to you and I was like, how do I even like legally structure this thing? I don't know. I don't know how to keep my head above, the legal sand, as it were. And so, reaching out and figuring out what pieces you need, but then it's not going to be perfect and it's never perfect. But if you're mission driven and you realize like, this is the goal, this is where we're headed, what are the things that we need to do to, kind of 80-20, like, let's don't worry about so much about the 20, let's worry about the 80 and let's help the most people and do it this way. And then, this is like from a profit perspective, same thing. Like, we can't build to the 20%. We need to build to the 80%. Let's, figure out the thing that's going to work from this perspective to keep our books balanced. And yeah, that was a totally different mindset, but I tell you what, I really like it. I really enjoy being an entrepreneur. I enjoy building, scaling, solving problems. That's ultimately what it is, right? Like I do really enjoy that.
And it makes you better at solving other problems. You just get better at solving other problems in your life. But I think that you're right. I think of my path as an entrepreneur from like 2012 to about 2016. I kind of sucked. I was all grit and spit and vinegar and just I'll outwork, and then I had an investor come into my company, and it was kind of a mentor at the time too, just showed me so many different ways to work smarter, implementing technology and systems and processes and learning how to run a P&L and all these kind of things I just didn't know. And I had the story in my head, and I think a lot of docs can have this, is like, that's not me. This is me. Well, it's like, hey, you got to kind of understand all this stuff, right? And through the process, loving it, right? Like I love building and creating systems and processes. I love paying attention to every little tiny detail, where who I was before was like, throw it against the wall, see if it sticks. And we'll figure it out from there. And my wife and I joke, cause she's kind of like we'll figure it out person. And I'm like, no, we won't. Like when there was even some, we're going to get our dry cleaning after hours. You can go like pick it up, type of code in. And she's like, let's go stop and do that. And I was like, do you know how to do it? And she was like, we'll figure it out. And I was like, we're not stopping and doing it, because I realized that my peace and patience will be strained upon trying to figure it out. I'm like, honey, you can go do it like tomorrow when you're by yourself. You can figure out how to do the dry cleaning. But in realizing there's little things like that shift, where before I would have been more like that. But you learn, you learn these things about your personality. I think finding out what your weaknesses are, and sometimes there's a depth in that, where your weakness isn't exactly what you think it was on the surface. It's something below that needs to be addressed. And once you address that, it opens up so many more things, and it now becomes a strength, where you can say, well, I'm not good at math, or I'm not a good numbers guy. Well, you just need to reframe the way you look at it, find a way to love it, and then next thing you know, like, you're awesome at it, right? And so it's just part of the journey, right? You learn as you discover, as you go down the path. And what do you think are some of the biggest, today where you stand, like, what do you think if someone is a physician and they're like, man, I want to build a personal brand and something outside of what I'm currently doing? Do you think there's a couple key things that you would give advice on as it pertains to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, gosh, we as physicians are probably passionate about what we do within the field that we're in. That's not always the right thing to build the personal brand on. In fact, I was actually just having this conversation with my wife. She loves being on stage, and we're talking about like, what's the most impactful thing that my wife Ashley, Dr. Ashley, could do on stage? It's probably not weight loss, actually, even though that's her space, that's her company. Is that the thing that she wants to continue to build on her brand? Because she has so many powerful messages that she could talk about, right? Being a female entrepreneur, being a mother of three, and the husband or the wife of an orthopedic surgeon. Like all these things are interesting things. So I think find that thing that you're most passionate about. Because when you start creating content, like when I create content around bone health, some people think like bone health, God, that sounds kind of boring. And it could be. But the way that I look at bone health, I say, oh my gosh, I get to talk about the controversial hormone space. I get to talk about food. I get to talk about vegans. I get to talk about carnivores. I get to dig into some of the most controversial spaces in medicine and in modern culture. And I do it all through the lens of bone health. And then I present research to support my opinion. So I kind of stand there and I'm like, look, like this is what it shows. Like this makes sense. And I just love the shit out of it. And I get really passionate in my videos, and people see that.
Yes.
right? They look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, like this guy. Like I just had in our community today, somebody asked me a question about, oh, there was a New York Times article that was recently published that said, we don't need all that protein. And they were trying to make the argument that people like myself and you and
Mhm.
Gabrielle Lyon and these other, protein advocates we're misrepresenting the literature. And so I went on this like kind of spirited conversation for about 10 minutes with the community about why this is crazy and what the research shows and blah, blah, blah. So I just get really passionate about it. And this is why my channel, my brand is not about orthopedic surgery, even though that's what I did. It is now about, these are the things that we can do to improve our bone health. And if you have osteoporosis, it's this, if it's younger, like this, like all these things, but they're things that I'm really passionate about talking about and researching and exploring. And that's why my list of content is infinite at this point.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, and I can feel it. And there's most people don't understand this. And you'll probably relate to it more now than you would have maybe a few years ago. But one of the things that with doctors that want to start, building a brand, creating content, is if you have to speak from your head, you're dead, right? Like when you're speaking, like speaking from your heart, your soul, like finding that true voice of the thing you're so passionate about, it's received, right? We hear here, but we feel here. And so when someone's like, talk from my head, this is the stats, this is that, it's like, so it gets
It's
tuned
not
out,
going anywhere.
right? But when you have that emotion into it, because you truly are emotional, they're feeling that same emotion from you and they're receiving the message actually more impactfully because of that. And so it's hard to have a passionate conversation or create content around something you're not passionate about. And that's why when giving even young entrepreneurs advice, I'm like, here's the two things. What's something you love so much you could do it every single day? Like that's thing number one. Number two, how much money do you want to make? And so the reason is because you can make as much money as you want to make living and doing a life in a business that you love. It just may require different work. There's guys that like makeup, and those guys can make $1 million a year doing makeup on YouTube. I mean, like it exists. Anything you can fathom could be, but you're just going to have to do the work, right? So anybody can do anything they want to do and make the amount of money that they want to make. The hardest part sometimes is actually just getting super clear. And when I hear you talk, I think you love to share knowledge that is likely not mainstream and potentially controversial because it is the correct message. It's the truth. It's the right thing. And I think there's a part of you too of wanting to help people that have maybe not been lied to, but just misled, in that you have a message that can help lead them down a better path, and you practice it. You have the street credit and the everything to prove it. And so I think that's awesome. And I think that's, when you as a person can identify that thing, you can build anything on that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I tell people because I do get asked all the time, how'd you come up with this idea and why bone health and, why YouTube and not Instagram? And I am on Instagram. Like I said, my message hits better and my audience is more interested in long form content. So while we're hitting 100,000 subscribers this week or next week, I'm at 28,000 followers on Instagram, which is still not tiny, but it's nothing as significant. And the traction is so much less, but I do better at long form than I do short form, but it's something I'm working on.
It's something you had to learn, right? And there's a part of that you had to learn, and you in order to learn that, you had to try it, right? You couldn't take a course. You couldn't like just do one thing. Well, this year I'll do Instagram, and next, dude, it might be 5 years before you can ever get to the thing that's your thing. And that's what even, I used to get people give me a hard time for posting on LinkedIn. They're like, Adam, that's not really LinkedIn. I'm like, whose rules? I was like, I'm going to post whatever I want, wherever I want, period. Right. And
Yeah.
it's funny how people can have that opinion, and we can have that opinion, right? Where it's like, let it rip, see where it lands. And then if it lands there consistently, keep shooting there. Right. And so it's the trial and error of taking action is the most important thing.
And prioritizing it so that it is, when I started, it was really kind of a side thing. Like I said, I wasn't doing a great job scripting. Now, scripting and coming up with content, doing research, it's most of my professional time.
Yeah. I'll never
Like if,
forget, you and I we were gonna plan a call, and I remember we were like going back and forth, and you're like, well, it was like from 9 to 1, I'm recording content. And I was like, my man, like that, and that's a dedication, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's not when I have time. I block time. I have 2 hours a week I block with my full-time media guy that we create content, right? It's locked in, just like anything else that I would do, any other meeting. And I remember hearing you the first time you mentioned that, and I was like, this dude's serious. Like he's going all in. And that was maybe a year and a half ago. I remember you saying something like that. And it's like, oh, what happened? Like it's that commitment, right? Are you willing to block 2, 3 hours to create content? Even every morning I spend at least 30 minutes just getting my brain into it. Right. And I'll take some notes when I'm fresh in the morning on the treadmill or something like that. And it's just that simple. You just start making lists of stuff and all right, start shooting the video, and they're going to suck at the beginning. They're not going to be that good, but eventually it gets great. Right. And that's the fun part about the process, but you just have to get started.
Well, and it feeds itself too. So what's happened for us is the community, even like YouTube comments, people will they'll ask a follow-up question that's a great idea for a video. And this is why our video list is infinite, is because now the community feeds it. They'll drop in a link to an article and ask a question. And I'm like, oh man, that's a good video. Right. So I have a whole system now where like I just tag my media person and she creates a ClickUp task. And then that goes into the flow. I've had different people doing different types of scripting and stuff, still working on the best optimization method. But yeah, it's got to be systematic. It's got to be dedicated time.
And something you reminded me of too, I think there's another part, two parts to what you just said that I thought of is one is having a team like that is also bought in, sold out on the mission, right? That's one part. And I think about that because my media guy, I have him on my mastermind call and he's entrepreneurial. He wants to build his media business. He's really talented. And so what I to your point, I've had him where I'm like, hey, what are questions you would ask me? I'm like, you would ask me questions on business and stuff like that. And so there's things, and he's a Christian guy. He's like early, late 20s. So he's like early into, find the girl, like all these kind of things that he has all these questions for. And I'm like, listen, I need you to think of all the questions you want to ask me, and we're going to create content with that. And he does a great job with that stuff because he'll listen. I'm like, what about this? Or how do you start? Like, he's got good stuff because finding people that are bought in, that are within the company too, should have questions to the leader. And for the leader, that's great content.
Yeah, well, and I think too, to that point too, my team, as we have our leadership meetings or our marketing meetings, they're looking at me and saying, Doug, you can't do this new shiny thing that I want to pursue. They're like, your job, your role, your highest leverage of your skill set is to create content and connections. And I'll be like, I need to see more patients or open up my schedule for this. And they're like, no, you're not going to do that. You need to create content and connections so that we can grow the business. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And so they're steering me down that pathway now.
Yeah. Like that's when you have people that are bought into the mission because they won't let you go off mission. Right. Like they're going to say, no, hold on. And that's where it sounds silly to say. And I need it. Dan Martell was saying it to me that where it hit. I look up to him. He's just killed it in the space that we're talking about, the coaching and media space. But he's like, look, man, you're the talent. And I was like, that feels weird to say. Right. But like, Doug, you're the talent. Right. So, and the talent doesn't mean you don't have any other talents. It just means like your job is to create the content. Right. And your job is to deliver the message.
Well, and this is really important for physicians who feel like, their talent is seeing patients. It could be surgical or non-surgical or whatever. And that is a talent. I'm sure that everybody listening to this, that is a talent.
Yes.
But the question is what is your mission? And then what is the best use of your time? I still see patients. I just don't see that many, right? I have a very limited window. We onboard very few patients for me, and I keep it very small intentionally. I want to keep my foot in the door. I want to continue to have these conversations because it helps with credibility. And if I don't see patients for a while, I kind of forget about the names of the products and like some of the details of what we're talking about. So
Sure.
I think there's value in that, but at the same time, what's the best use of your time? Understanding that, like you said, you are the talent, and yes, you're talented at seeing patients, but is that the best use of your time?
And being able to manage that where, okay, I'm going to start the new thing and start spreading my talent, but eventually realizing like I have to like let off what was in order to go where I want to go, which is the future. And, you've done just a great job. Like I literally, guys that are looking to, or gals, docs that want to build the brand, I show them like, let me show you what this guy did in 2 years. Committed, discipline, on the calendar, just start, right? The vision evolves. Like you said, there was a business day one, but now there's four, right? And the evolution of what's to come and what will be in 5 years, it'll be different than what's today, which is great, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's amazing. So listen, man, I appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate the friendship and everything that we've connected on over the years. Thanks for being on the show. I think that there's so many people, that can learn so much from you and what you've done and your personal growth and business too. So I'm just honored and blessed to have you on here. Can you share where everybody can find you, like some of the places? And we'll put all that in the show notes too, but just you'd share that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now, if you go to our website, it's kind of the website that we're kind of redoing, but hopefully by the time this comes out, it'll be done. If not, it'll redirect somewhere good, is drdouglucas.com. And that's going to have all the things. So that's DRDOUGLUCS.com. That's going to go to all the things. YouTube, it's the Dr. Doug Show. Instagram, it's Dr._Doug Lucas. And look forward to learning more from your audience. And Adam, you've been a huge help along the way, from that first conversation we had through coaching me through how to build the businesses, all the way to the next steps and whatever they may be. It's been really a pleasure to have you as a friend of mine.
It's been my pleasure. And at the end of the day for me is watching you, like you've done all these things and happy to help anywhere I could plant a little seed or something like that. But you've done just such incredible work and it's inspirational. And for me, talking all the time to doctors, it just feel like there's no outlet. There's nothing else, for you to be an example that I can say, hey, let me show you Dr. Doug. Let me show you what he did. Orthopedic surgeon, transition to this and like everything. And, your marriage is better. Your time with your kids is better. Your health is better, right? Like you look like a savage 300 warrior from the guy you used to be, right? When you weren't bad, but now you're just different, right? And so it's like, all of that stuff, like being that multidimensional man that grows, and a lot of it's just fueled because you're pursuing a purpose and a mission and a vision, and you're just alive more and everywhere in your heart. And I want that for more doctors because at the end of the day, you're going to help way more people.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I appreciate that, and yeah, I do. I feel that way. The mission is going well. My marriage is so much stronger than it's ever been. My relationship with my kids is amazing. My relationship with myself is better than it's ever been. So yeah, this has just been super fun journey, and there's so much more to do.
Who doesn't want that? Hey, listen, thank you for joining the 1% Doctor podcast. I'm your host, Adam Lamb, with our awesome guest, Dr. Doug Lucas. Please subscribe, follow, and share this episode, and stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the 1% Doctor. Please be sure to subscribe to the show where you're able to consume more podcasts, get more value, and learn more about doctors potentially just like you. Please tell a friend, review the show, and we'll see you in the next episode.